Kris again. I'm going to give you guys a second to jump in, and I'm going to reshare the link with everybody on social. I don't know what the hell's going on with YouTube, but it's really, really annoying. Let me just make sure the volume is off this time. I think what happened is my phone was somehow logged into YouTube as well, so it was playing through my phone, like I was watching the video on my phone, and then it was looping while I was talking. I swear to God, one of these days there will be no technical difficulties and I'll just get it right the first time. So give me 2 seconds. I'm going to update the links on my accounts really quick because I just sent everybody to a place that's not working. Oh, good Lord. Hello, Guam. And we're back. Yeah, we're back. My gosh. I don't know what is going on these days, but hold on 1 second. I'm going to edit my posts just so they have the right links. And I sent it out in a newsletter too. It's all going to be wrong. That's okay. Can only do so much, right? Right. Continue. Oh, you son of a bitch. What is going on? I hate tech. I do hate it. Okay, that's right. Original post, fix Twitter, and then Instagram peeps will have to just watch that really annoying last video to figure out that we're over here. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Eventually I'll get the hang of this. It just doesn't seem to want to work with me today for some reason. So I will say today's story is a wild one, and it needs a little bit of a disclaimer, which I'll get into in 2 shakes. Let me just get to that post, and then I'll be able to think it through a little bit easier. There we go. Why can't I edit it? Delete. You son of a gun. View metrics. Oh, God. I hate social so much. I hate it. What am I doing? Stinker. All right, so we need to delete that one. Delete. All right, and how's everybody's day? Let's start there. Is everybody doing well? You guys all out there raising hell? Love of God. I swear. Son of a biatch. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what is that? Spooky. There you go. There it is. It was just hiding. Lordy. There's that. And where's my link? My link's right there. Okay, we're just about there. We're almost there. But I don't have the link letting everybody know in the comments what's going on. Okay, hold on. 2 shakes. There we go. Okay, Twitter's updated. And now, and welcome. All right, just so here, guys. Will be all right. You guys ready? Thank you so much for being patient with me. Like I said, this thing is all still relatively new. I had it all set up. I was ready to go, and then somehow I screwed it up. So here we go. All right. Pam says tech makes me insane. I agree. Kris says always ghosts in the machinery and gremlins to make your day. I agree. William, you're gonna miss me at Penhurst? What the hell, dude? Okay. Alright, so just a heads up, guys. This is a really freaking crazy ass story. And in a lot of ways, it's very, very highly speculative, okay? So what happened was this crazy event played out, this murder that was really gruesome played out in the mid 1800s, okay? And then there was a woman who released a book in 1997 covering this murder, and she kind of, a lot of people, how do I put this? The book took off because it was pretty gruesome and it was a wild story. However, a lot of like historians and amateur historians went back and they started looking into it, and there's a lot of dots in her book that really just don't connect, but she kind of connected them anyways, is what I have put together. I have not read her book yet. Just put that out there. It's called The Mayne Inheritance. But I've looked into this story a few times over the years, and it's something I found out about while I was living in Brisbane. And I just wanted to share it with you guys because it's a really weird story. So that said, because this story is all over the damn place, it's a really wild and weird web of just crazy. I'm gonna handle this live kind of like a storytelling session, all right? And at the end, for those of you who are still with me, we can ask questions, answer questions, and I'm all over it. But until then, I'm gonna just try to get through this the best I can, because it's a weird one. It's a very strange one. Okay, so like I said, highly speculative. There are points that are absolute fact, and then there's stuff that we just don't know. It's rumors. It kind of just is what it is. So now, if you guys want to talk about what I'm talking about, chat it up. All the power to you. If you see anybody popping up in the chat and they're like, why aren't you answering my questions? Because occasionally I have people yelling at me like that. Just let them know there's a pinned comment by me explaining why I'm not answering questions until the end. Okay, so let's jump into this. Now, Brisbane, I'm sure everybody's heard of Brisbane, but Brisbane, Australia is in the state of Queensland. It's on the east coast. Today it's a big city. It's not like, it's a big city for Australia, and I don't mean that in any negative way towards Australia, but it's not like an American city. It's definitely a city. It's just not as big as our cities. And I was lucky enough to live just outside the city for about 3 years, on and off. Beautiful place. And in that beautiful place, this crazy story took place, okay? So it all took place on Kangaroo Point in Brisbane. The murder did. And we'll get into the murder in a second. Now, Kangaroo Point today is absolutely beautiful. Okay, let's say you have the city of Brisbane, and in comes the Brisbane River, and there's a point of the river that kind of hooks up and hairpins and then continues on its way, right? Well, this little landmass between that hairpin is known as Kangaroo Point. The really cool thing about Kangaroo Point is it's very outdoorsy and very recreational. There's biking paths, walking paths, running paths, there's outdoor areas for picnicking, there's a boating club. Around the corner, there's a really nice restaurant. And Kangaroo Point's kind of like 2 levels. You have the base level, the riverbank area, where all the recreational stuff's happening. And then it kind of shoots up in this huge cliff. And it's really cool because if you're walking around Kangaroo Point or biking, whatever you choose to do, there's also people that are typically rock climbing on the cliff. Now, it's cool because it's very recreational, very outdoorsy on that side of the riverbank. But you look over the river, because you're right on the bank, and directly across the river is Brisbane City. So you get this whole outdoorsy recreational feel on one side, and you look over across the river, and it's just a beautiful, like, just beautiful views of Brisbane City. Really, really pretty. Now, when all of this took place, Brisbane would have been basically a pioneer town. There wouldn't have been a whole lot going on. It would have been very, very early days. You really wouldn't even been able to call it a city. It was like the very start. And you figure our pioneer towns were mainly populated by men. They're coming into town, they're putting up buildings, they're mining, they're doing whatever it is they're doing. And it kind of would have been the same thing from what I've read for this section of Brisbane known as Kangaroo Point. So our story, our main character is Patrick Mayne. And Patrick Mayne was born in Northern Ireland. Okay, he was born in Northern Ireland in 1824. Then, around the age of 17 or 18, he boarded a ship called Percy, and he moved his little behind to Australia. Okay, 17-year-old, as far as I know, moved by himself, looking to start a life in a far-off land. So he lands in New South Wales, and he's there for a little bit, and then he bounces up to Brisbane. And when he was in Brisbane, he ended up securing a job in Kangaroo Point as a butcher at a slaughterhouse. So, really exciting job there. I don't think I could personally do it. But yeah, it would have been a lot of like labor kind of jobs going on at the time because again, they're at the start and they're starting to build up this area. So we have Patrick, that's our first player, right? Well, then we have Robert Cox. Now, Robert Cox was in town. He was only in town for 3 days at this point when he was murdered. And Robert Cox was in town because he worked as a sawyer, cutting down cedar trees. And on the night of March 25th, 1848, or the early mornings of March 26th, he was not only murdered, he was like horrifically murdered, dismembered, kind of murdered. And like I said, he hadn't been there very long. He really just got into town. So Robert was staying in Kangaroo Point at a place called the Bush Inn. Bush Inn was an inn. It was a place that all the workers would go to eat and drink and stay while they're in town. And he was rumored to have 350 pounds on him, which is a lot of money at that time. If you think, like what I was told, a butcher would have made 1 pound a week. So for a man to come in whose job is to cut down trees and he's saying he's rumored to have 350 pounds on him, that's a lot of money. Now, Robert supposedly got schmammered. He just completely got hammered that night. And after he got hammered, he went to bed. Now, this is where the whole story kind of goes sideways and nobody really knows what the hell happened. Okay, so he goes to bed, and then the next morning, about 7 a.m., there was a family out on their boat. They're on the Brisbane River having a little cruise, and on the riverbank, stuck in the mud, they see the bottom half of a human body, and then just up the riverbank, not far away, they found the top half of a human body, but the head was missing. So the family immediately alerted the police, and the police show up, they do their thing, and after a few hours, they remove the body from the riverbank, and now they go on this search for this man's head. Well, back at the Bush Inn, they found a large amount of blood in the backyard, I guess, of this place near the well. They look in the well, they notice there's blood in the well. So they end up going down there and they end up pulling out a section of what they believe was human intestine. They pulled out a knife, a towel, and 3 shirts. Now, one of these shirts had a missing sleeve. And that's important because one half of the body, I believe, is the top section that was on the riverbank. It had the missing sleeve with it. So that connects the 2 crime scenes, right? But they still can't find the head. So then there was this guy, he was just like, he was hanging around, kind of one of those like bystanders, curious of what's going on. He notices that across the street from the inn, There's a building that's under construction. Nobody's in there using it. No businesses are running out of it yet. It's still in the middle of construction. Well, a dog comes wandering out, and he found that to be kind of odd. So I don't know if he went over or he had the police go over, but he goes over, or he or the police officer goes over, and they get through the front door, and they see a head between the floor beams, because the floor wasn't completely boxed in yet. They see this man's head stuck between one of them. So now they have the head, they have the body, and they've figured out that it was this man, Robert Cox. Okay? So now, this whole thing was insane. It's probably way beyond anything anybody at that point had ever witnessed themselves. So for a small community of people to be running around looking for body parts would have been pretty freaking disturbing, to say the least. And they ended up getting to this point where they ended up arresting this man by the name of William Fife. Now, William worked as a cook at the Bush Inn. And I read some other stuff that kind of went through the accounts of how the two of them knew each other. But from what I read, all the evidence against William was insanely circumstantial. Like, I guess over the top circumstantial evidence. So much so that when this man went to trial, obviously his lawyer's fighting for him, but the prosecutor and the judge were making comments about how circumstantial this evidence was. Regardless, the jury found him to be guilty, and he was sentenced to be hanged. Now, I guess this man, he protested the entire way, saying that he was innocent right up to the point that they hanged him. The crazy thing is like, with all the research I've done, every time I've heard stories about somebody being hanged, they have an opportunity to address the morbid audience in front of them that wants to watch this nonsense. But in this case, from what I read, he wasn't able to do that. I guess he had written this 4-page statement insisting that he did not murder this man. He had that 4-page letter in his pocket, and somewhere between his jail cell and the gallows, somebody pulled it out of his pocket. And then when he got to the gallows and he went to insist on speaking to again proclaim his innocence, they quickly hanged him before he could get a statement out. And unfortunately, they really, really botched the hanging to the point that he suffered way beyond what he should have. So the whole thing was really kind of weird. Circumstantial evidence. The judge is making comments that it is. The prosecuting lawyer is saying that it is. And then, obviously his lawyer is going to be saying it. But the man goes to trial. He's convicted. He's hanged. Now, the night of the murder, this is where things get weird. Because I was just kind of like, what does any of this have to do with Patrick, right? Why is Patrick, in this woman's book that was put out in 1997, claiming that William didn't do it, this man, Patrick Mayne, did? Well, based on rumors, and these are the rumors I was told when I was in town too, researching it myself, everybody was saying that the day that Robert Cox got murdered, he was in the Bush Inn, and he was bragging about all this money he had on him, right? He just got this big payday with all these cedar trees. And the story goes that Patrick was in the bar when Robert was bragging, and that Patrick murdered him to take his money. However, from what I was reading, there was a few eyewitnesses, and yes, they did put Patrick in the pub that night. He was actually there with a few other people. He showed up after hours, they all managed to be able to sit around and drink until early morning of March 26th. But they said that when Patrick was in the bar, Robert had already gone to bed, completely and utterly hammered and just passed out. The thing that confuses me, though, is they say, like, with how much blood was in the back of the inn, they think that that's the place where he was murdered and dismembered, right? And if Patrick and his friends were all drinking at this inn or this bar until 3 or 4 in the morning, when the hell did this murder take place? And how would nobody notice it happen if they're all in the same building? Like, that part to me doesn't make sense. So even though we can put Patrick and we can put Robert in the same location as far as the inn goes, we can't prove that Patrick actually killed him. Because by all accounts, Robert wasn't awake when Patrick was in the bar. So I have no idea what the deal is there, but that's, you know, that's as close as they get to being in the same location when this whole thing went down. Weirdly, Patrick's name never came up, as far as I read, as a possible suspect. So here's where the story gets weird, and this is what was really pumped out in this book. Okay, so Robert Cox got murdered March of 1848, and then a year later in April, Patrick marries a woman by the name of Mary McIntosh. So Mary and him get married. She's also an immigrant from Ireland. She came into Australia a year after he did. I don't know how they met, but they did. And I'm willing to bet there weren't very many women back then at that time, because again, it's a frontier town. And then about 5 months later, Patrick had this kind of rags to riches story. And this is where the book that I mentioned earlier that was put out in 1997 kind of like makes this story kind of go off into a weird path. So Patrick, in September of 1849, he purchases land on Queen Street in Brisbane, and he opens a butcher shop. Now, this man arrived at the age of 17 or 18, completely and utterly penniless. So then he's like, 8 years later, all of a sudden he's got enough money to buy his own butcher shop when he was working at a job that only paid him £1 a week. Some sources said that at his rate of pay, it would have taken him 5 years worth of salary to afford what he pulled off. So this is where the rumors kind of begin with this story. They're trying to say, where in the hell did he get this money? Right? And you know, still they were still questioning whether or not William Fife was even guilty of killing Robert Cox to begin with. So I don't know, it gets a little weird because you think about it, like, Robert Cox was butchered. The man was butchered and he was scattered in 3 or 4 locations. Patrick, he knew how to take animals apart. I'm sure he'd know how to take people apart, which is kind of gross to think about. So she made that connection, right? Now, supposedly, Robert Cox had a large sum of money on him. However, it doesn't seem like there's any proof of that. Like, I haven't seen anybody put records forward that say, yeah, he absolutely had this amount on him, and it was nowhere to be found after he died. So that part I find a little odd. I don't know. Maybe he did have that money on him. Maybe he didn't. Either way, you know, again, it's speculative at best. But then you have Patrick, who is penniless, buying this place up on Queen Street in Brisbane, which would have cost a lot of money for the time. So where the hell did he get the money? No one seems to know that part. So then the question is, did Patrick kill Robert, take the money, and then frame William Fife? I don't know. I have no idea. Now, the thing that I also found weird with Patrick too is it seems like the more I read about him, there was like 2 portrayals of him. On one side, he was rumored to be a drunk. He was rumored to be like a really bad temper, prone to violence. He had run-ins with the cops. He was rumored to suffer from some form of like hereditary insanity, is how they put it. And they say that people locally on the high society scale kind of like looked down at him because well, again, I don't know if this is coming from the book or if this is actually what happened. They're looking down at him because they didn't know where the money came from. This book, it feels like this book really blurred a lot of lines where people don't really know what's fact and what's fiction. That's the hard part with the story. On the other hand, Patrick, he bought the butcher shop. He ran that business. He bought other businesses. He bought some land. He got involved in local government. He was a respected businessman. He was a respected politician. He was considered a moderate politician who looked after things that people cared about, sewage, water, that whole thing. And he was also known to be charitable. He was giving money to education funds and that sort of thing. So it just really confused me because it's like, well, which one is it? Is he a nasty, violent drunk, or is he a highly respected businessman and government official? Which, I mean, I suppose somebody could be both, you know, public life versus private life, but I don't know. It's just, the story is so freaking weird. Like, I don't know how much of it's true and how much somebody just took an event out of history and just went wild with it to sell a book. I don't know. So now, here's where the story gets even stranger, okay? Patrick dies on August 17th, 1865. So around the time Civil War was going on here, just to give you kind of an idea time-wise. And he died of an unknown illness on Queen Street. I'm guessing at his residence because his butcher shop was on Queen Street as well as his house. And they say that his funeral was the largest the city had seen to date. So now, if this man was a violent drunk, prone to violence, running with cops, and wasn't respected, I don't think he'd have a massive funeral. I don't think anybody would show up. Again, it just keeps contradicting itself. Now, the rumor is, again, I think the rumor came from the book, and I think the other historians and amateur historians are arguing this point, okay? The book claims that on his deathbed, on Patrick's deathbed, right, he was kind of delirious and out of his mind, and he confessed to his priest that he had murdered a man, and he didn't name the man, and that he let somebody else hang for it. Here's the problem. There doesn't seem to be any record of this anywhere. It's not, from what others say, there's no mention of it in diaries, there's no mention of it in newspapers. It's kind of this thing that's thrown out of this book, and people have questioned the author about it, and she doesn't seem to really come up with any explanation of where she got it from. So who knows? But they say that this rumor somehow got into town, and then the family was kind of ostracized. They looked at him and everything that he built in Brisbane as like one of the founding people of the city, and everything that he did as connected to blood money, which again doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make sense, but it's a crazy story, so it gets your attention. So now, following his death, his wife, Mary, completely takes over his estate. She ends up being an amazing businesswoman. She runs his butcher shop. She's running his estate. She purchases land in her own name. She builds a family homestead. Then they had a total of, from what I've read, 6 kids, but only 5 of them made it to adulthood. 1 passed under a year old. And with those children, there was a son named William, and it really doesn't mention much about him from what I've found so far. There's another son, Isaac, and I found a few things that mentioned that he was a lawyer and that he ended up in a Sydney asylum and he hanged himself. I don't know what the hell happened there. They mentioned another daughter, Rosanna. They said that Rosanna went on to be a nun. And the book, I guess, twists it to kind of make it look like it fits into this hereditary insanity thing with her and her brother. But she ended up being a nun, and she had this nervous breakdown, and they say that she was confined in this convent for her breakdown. Then they had 2 children that were highly successful, and they were known for being very charitable. And from how some people spin it, they were very charitable because they were trying to make up for the sins of their father. But on the other hand, you could look at it as their father was charitable, so maybe they were following in his footsteps. Who knows? But James, one of the sons, he turned out to be a doctor or a surgeon, and he was also a businessman, and like I said, he was known for being very charitable. And then there was Mary Amelia Mayne. She was the last child to pass in 1940, and the thing that the two of them are most known for is that they had bought 270 acres in St. Lucia, which wasn't far from Brisbane. It was like west of Brisbane. And they bought the money to give to the University of Queensland to open, this college. It was a college campus, and it still is today. That's the main part of the campus, is on the land that was given to the campus from the Mayne family. Kind of crazy. Now, the other thing that I learned with this is that James and Mary Amelia, when they passed in their trust, they left their estates to Queensland University to continue building up the school, especially in the medical department. He was a doctor. He contributed financially to keeping the college going and keeping it funded. Now, part of their trust were two buildings called the Brisbane Arcade, and the other one right next to it was the Regent Building. Been to both. Both are beautiful, but both are up and running, and I believe the money raised by those goes to the school still. So I thought that was kind of wild that they've been dead forever, but they're still funding things in the city. It's kind of neat. Now, here's where the family curse comes in. And again, I don't know how much of this is true and how much of it is just BS that's been thrown into a story to make it more interesting and crazy, right? So Patrick and Mary had 5 children, 6 if you count the one who died as an infant. But they had 5 children that lived to be adults, and all 5 children didn't have kids. Now, there's 2 stories that come out of this. One story is that the mother, Mary, Patrick's wife, made her children promise that they would not marry and they would not have children because she felt that this family insanity was a curse and she wanted to stop it. The other story is that the children got together and they made a pact and swore to each other that they would not marry and they would not have kids to try to stop the family curse of insanity. I have a hard time believing this, to be perfectly honest. I mean, they have 2 siblings that seem like they might have turned out with some mental issues. Their father clearly had some problems, but I don't know, I just have a hard time imagining a mother telling her children not to have children. It's kind of odd. But at the same time, to have 5 kids and to have none of them have kids is also strange too, so maybe there's something to it. I don't know. As far as ghost stories to this whole insane story, here's the thing with ghost stories. Sometimes I think when an event takes place in history that's crazy and wild and over the top, everybody assumes a ghost story has to be attached to it too, right? And I think that's kind of what's happening in this case. So the Brisbane Arcade, the building that Mary Amelia and the names, so many names, James funded to have built, that still helps fund the college today, okay? The Brisbane Arcade is like a shopping center, and if I remember correctly, it's almost kind of like a tunnel or throughway / shopping center that kind of connects 2 streets, Queen Street, and I forget the other one. It's been a while. Forgive me. But it's a shopping center. So if you go in there, you've got shops down both sides, and there's a second level that's got like a balcony level, and there's shops up there. And the story goes that mainly shopkeepers and security guards would see a woman in black wandering the top level of the Brisbane Arcade. Now, before this book came out in 1997, the story attached to this ghost was different. the story was that the shopkeepers would see this woman in black wandering the top level, okay? But they tied it to a woman who used to own or run a shop. And the story was, there's two versions of the story. Either she died on site late at night of a heart attack or stroke, and she just stayed and humped the place. Or she died somewhere else, but she loved the place, she loved her shop, and she loved the arcade, and somehow she decided to go back there. Residual energy, I have no idea. Once the book came out, from what I've read, the story started changing where people were kind of manipulating and changing the story to make it sound like it's actually Patrick's wife that's haunting the place. And I remember when I went there, there was this bulletin board thing on the wall that had, you know, the whole Mayne family tree, and it briefly, you know, talks about the whole background. So their history is very much broadcasted there. I don't know, man. I like, this is what I mean. Sometimes things are so crazy in history, people really force the ghost stories to fit a certain narrative. And I almost feel like that's what's happening here. If before the book came out, this whole haunting was attributed to an old shopkeeper, I think I would believe that over it's suddenly Mary Patrick's wife. But who knows? And realistically, the only connection the Maynes had with the building is they paid to build it. They didn't hang out there. They didn't run a shop there. However, their old original butcher shop / original home, because I think they lived above the butcher shop, if I remember correctly, but don't hold me to that. It was near where the Brisbane arcade was built. Some people say it's built right where it used to be, but I don't know. I think it was built near it. So that was their two main connections to the place. I don't know why they would haunt it, and I definitely don't know why their mother would haunt it outside of the home connection, but I still think shopkeeper, if there's anything to that story at all. Anyways, the other story was people think that their cemetery is haunted by them. So I was fortunate enough to go to the cemetery. When you get there, it's first of all, it's massive. It's in a town called Toowong, which is west of Brisbane. It was just north of where I lived by like maybe 20 minutes. And when you go there and you go to this monument for the family, it's massive. It's made out of white Italian marble. I think there's some sandstone in there too in the middle of it somewhere. It's just very ornate. It's freaking huge. It is beautiful. It's a showstopper. It towers over everything and everything around it. Okay? Now, from what I understand, when Mary died in 1889, Patrick, her mother, and their infant child were all buried in a different cemetery. Mary was buried in Toowong Cemetery. The surviving members of the family decided they were going to move Patrick, the daughter, and Mary's mother over to Toowong, so the 4 people would all be buried together. And after that happened, that's when this monument was built. Now, as far as I know, as the children started dying off, they were all buried there too. So they're all buried together. None of them had children. That line of the Mayne family just died out with Mary Amelia in 1940. This is like the names. But then you've got people that have decided that because, again, this story is so wild, we have to add a ghost story to it. So the story attached to this monument is that it oozes a red fluid. So people are trying to spin it that, it's just a sign of them and their blood money, or they've got blood on their hands type of thing. I've heard other people say that they just think it's like rust from whatever structures inside the monument. I did talk to a woman who worked at the cemetery. It was funny, they had this front office. It kind of worked as like a visitor center. It was strange. It's the first time I've seen that. She was very nice. She was very helpful. I asked her about the red fluid story. She thought it was funny. She really didn't put much weight into it. Not that I put much weight into it either. And the one thing, well, there's two things she told me that I found kind of interesting. The one attached to the family, though, was that, okay, do you know how I told you that when Patrick's children, James and Mary Amelia, passed, they left their trust to Queensland University? Well, because their trust is still funding the school, part of the agreement, I guess, is that Queensland University has to keep up the family monument and their burial plots. So they actually still look after the family and their resting place, which I found to be kind of weird, because if this is all true, if Patrick Mayne murdered Robert Cox, if Patrick has blood on his hands, if his entire empire came out of the money that he stole from the man that he murdered, Queensland University would be still profiting from that and looking after the family. It's really strange to me, if any of that is true. I don't know. The other weird thing that she mentioned, and this is totally left field, is and I find this funny. Again, weird stories. Everybody wants a piece of a weird story. Guess who else is supposedly buried in this cemetery? Jack the Ripper, of course. So she said that there are people that believe there was a man who was buried in the cemetery who was Jack the Ripper. He came from London. I think he came over after the last prostitute was killed. And I don't know. I just find it weird, because I know there's stories of people who live in the US that they think was Jack the Ripper too. But again, something crazy and more, and it seems like everybody wants a piece. It's just really strange to me. So I don't know what, that's got nothing to do with anything. It was just kind of a weird side note. So out of all of this strange shit, right? The only things that we know for sure, Cox was gruesomely murdered and dismembered and left in like 3 or 4 different locations on Kangaroo Point back in March 1848. We know that for sure. We know that William Fife hanged for the murder, but he insisted to the very end that he was innocent, so who knows? And then when it comes to Patrick's actual involvement in any of this, whether he murdered this guy or didn't, I mean, that's completely speculative at best. Nobody freaking knows. But that's what this book claims. And that's what everybody tells each other when you go to Brisbane and you talk about what happened there. It's really odd. And the story really stood out to me because I used to go to Kangaroo Point all the time. It's a beautiful spot. Really, really nice. South Bank is beautiful as well, but it's very different. Kangaroo Point is outdoorsy, it's recreational, it's walking, it's biking, it's boating, it's everything, while overlooking the city of Brisbane. It's beautiful. But I don't know. Now, there are 2 articles that I posted in the description of this video by a couple of people who seem to really be sticklers for skepticism and really be sticklers for history and sticklers for facts. And I really liked their 2 articles. So I posted the links to those if you guys want to check them out. They go through the detail of the murder more. They go through just a lot of things that pick apart this book that has made this whole case kind of blow up and painted Patrick as the murderer. Like, it doesn't really leave much room for doubt, even though there's a ton of room for doubt. But yeah, that's the Mayne family. That's Patrick Mayne, Mary Mayne, and their children, and poor Robert Cox and all this. I don't even understand what would have caused his murder to begin with, because whether or not he had that kind of money on him was debatable too. So, all right, guys, I am done rambling. That is the story. I want to see what you think about this. I'm going to open up YouTube on my computer so I can kind of read you better, because my eyes are I'm getting old. I mean, let's be honest. I'm getting old and my eyes don't want to work. Such a bitch. I hate it. But yeah, I'm curious as to your thoughts. Again, all you've got is what I gave you. But that's a lot of little dots to be connecting that are circumstantial to call a guy a murderer and then say that his entire empire was blood money. Who's to say, he didn't do it in legal ways? And I don't know, it would really suck. It'd really suck to find out I busted my ass. I did a lot of good. I did a lot of good for my town. And then people paint me out as a murderer. I'm not really sure what to make of that. It just seems really weird. Seems very speculative. I agree, Dylan. Australia ghosts seem to be very gothic and tragic at the same time. That's Eggsy. A lot of people do this though. If you think about it, like if there's some weird historic story attached to a building that's beyond the norm, everybody wants to put a ghost in it. So that's why I found this kind of funny too, because I thought the story in itself was weird, but then they start trying to attach ghosts to it. I don't even know. Tony, really enjoyed the story. I did too when I first heard about it, and I totally kind of fell for everything, hook, line, and sinker. And then I started looking into it, and I don't know. I don't know if I think Patrick did it. And really, one of the articles that I attached at the bottom, they go more into the circumstantial evidence with William Fife. And I could kind of see why a jury would convict him, because, there was a lot of things that just didn't look good. Didn't look good. He was talking about how William Fife and Robert Cox were friends, and they were seen fighting leading up to the murder, talking about money with each other, like one owing the other money or something. Blood found under William's bed. Like, there's a lot of random things that I could totally understand why they would commit him. But again, it was all circumstantial evidence. And again, I don't understand how there could be so many people in this inn to the early mornings drinking, and somehow this man was murdered out in the back of this establishment. It makes no sense. When somebody hears something, that part I don't get that either. Because it sounded like they were there drinking till like 3 a.m. So when exactly was Robert killed? 3 a.m, he ends up on the beach by 7. That's 4 hours to kill somebody and do what they did to him. It doesn't make sense. And there's 3 shirts. That's the other thing that didn't make sense to me. Why are 3 shirts at the bottom of the well with one missing a sleeve? If it was just William who killed Robert, do you think maybe there were several people that were in on it and they all threw their shirts down there to try to get away, get rid of evidence? I don't know. It's a weird story. I've always been somebody who's weirdly been into true crime, and I know I'm not the only one that gets hooked on this stuff. I know I'm not. I used to read a lot about serial killers. I actually have a funny story about that. But not if everyone is drunk. Most are oblivious to things happening around them, let alone noises outside a bar. That is true. But what I read was that the bar technically closed at 11, and that Patrick showed up with, I think, 2 other butchers and a guy who worked as a servant at the inn at 12:30, an hour and a half after they closed, looking to have drinks. So if they showed up at 12:30, you think anything that happened up until 12:30 they might have heard, unless they showed up hammered. I don't know. But again, from 12:30 to 7 a.m, this whole thing plays out with Robert Cox. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So I don't know. And one of the articles that I attached to went into all the different ways that Patrick could have financed the butcher shop on Queen Street when he first opened. And they were talking about how it was not normal for anybody to be walking around with that much money, because you didn't have an easy access to a bank because you're in a frontier town. There wasn't necessarily a bank there. You'd have slips from companies saying that they basically owed you X amount. So I don't know. When did Kris Williams turn into Catherine Townsend? Kris Williams has been into weird shit since she was very young. So when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be a profiler. And I watched so much serial killer shit. It was not even funny. Like, nonstop. It was a weird fascination. And not like I thought what they do is cool by any means. It's more or less like, what makes these people tick? What do these people have or don't have that we have or don't have that makes them capable of acting and committing the crimes that they do, right? Because most of us couldn't imagine going out and doing to somebody like what happened to Robert Cox in this story. Nobody could imagine that. No one sane could. So it used to be, for me, it was just like, well, what makes them tick? What makes them work this way? How can they live with themselves afterwards? Like, it's that part of it is fascinating to me. It's not that I worship these animals. It's just trying to figure out how they work and how they tick and how they function the way they function. And oh God, there's so many stories. Like the Iceman, I was all over that story. Criminal insanity and lack of moral boundaries could be totally possible. The funny thing that I read, funny and not funny, is that I've read a bunch of books on this. I got away from it for a while, but one of the many books that I read said that serial killers have in them the same thing, whatever that thing is, that normal people have in order to do certain jobs, like be soldiers, or maybe they're a policeman, or maybe they're a fireman. They have that need for adrenaline and that rush and that danger. And then in some jobs, killing can be part of the job if absolutely necessary for whatever reason. And they say that some people who have that thing find ways to live with that thing in a way that's acceptable within society, and others go down the path of criminal and serial killer and all of that. That I found to be pretty weird, but I also found it to be pretty fascinating, because it's strange how somebody could have that thing, if the way this guy explains it is right, and be a hero on one side, but then on the other be a complete and utter psychopath to us because of what they do. Sounds like that show Dexter. Absolutely. And the thing with Dexter, I love that show, by the way, absolutely obsessed. I think that's where I struggled with him, because at the end of the day, he was killing people, right? He's going around, he was stalking people, and he was murdering them. But he was also weirdly the hero in the show. You know, he was killing bad people, so for some reason that was okay. He was kind of taking out the trash, is the way they were putting it. So you were able to look at a guy who was a murderer, but look at him as a hero. It's so weird. But yeah, I love that show, and I love that show so much, and I really enjoyed the last season up until like the last couple episodes. That was a tease. That was such a tease. But it was fiction, so yes, it is fiction. But it's weird though, because like, have you ever wondered, you know, with all the time you have on this planet, how many people have you bumped into that are complete and utter psychopaths that could or have done stuff like this? I've wondered, because I know one of the guys that wrote the book, one of the books that I read, he said that he had come in contact with eight in his lifetime, not trying. And I'm like, how do you even do that? I could see if you're an officer, or, you know, you're in the FBI or whatever, and you're dealing with these wackos all the time, you're going to come in contact with them. But from what he said, it was just like random circumstances. And I'm just like, God, how many people are running around that are capable of living like this? They live a dual life. Completely insane to me. So I don't know, but this story just really struck my imagination. Like I said at the time, all I heard was the rumors, a lot of the stuff that came out, all the embellishments that came out with the book. Because when the book first came out in 1997, it just took off. It's called The Mayne Inheritance, and everybody ran with that version of the story. And then it wasn't until later you had professional historians and amateur historians kind of digging into the facts, and they were realizing she was connecting dots she shouldn't have necessarily connected. So it's kind of a weird book based on history, but not completely factual, or at least not completely proven. And honestly, like, I really feel for Patrick Mayne if he didn't do it, and he goes and does all this great things for a city and helps found the city, and you know, his family's looked at like trash. It's really weird. I don't know. How would you know how would you know without getting yourself killed? I don't know. But this is a thing too, is I've read books where they're interviewing the serial killers and they're talking about how they almost killed somebody, and then they just changed their mind for whatever reason. Like, the person just happened to say something, and for some reason it went against their internal ethics, even though they don't have empathy. Some of them will have these weird lines they won't cross. I just thought of an interview too. Have you guys ever heard of the Iceman out of New Jersey, New York? Richard Kuklinski? That is a weird freaking story. And that one, I read a book on him a long time ago, but I read a book on him, Firewalker. David says yes, he's heard of him. So I had seen an interview with this man years and years and years ago. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was a sit-down interview with a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist was going through this man's life, asking him questions directly, asking him about his life, his family, his childhood. Then they started getting into the murders, and all the murders that he committed were like for hire. He was working for the mob. He wasn't, I don't know that he was necessarily attached to any one mob. It's just like they could just hire him and he'd go and take people out. But there's a point in this interview where, okay, this is, I think this is what put me down the profile route when I was a kid, because I remember thinking, if you turn the volume off on this show and you see this big teddy bear of a man and he's laughing and he's joking and he's just like, you just want to hug him. You're like, oh, he seems so sweet, you know? And then you turn on the volume and he's like talking about dismembering people and leaving people in caves and cutting them so the rats would eat them. And I'm just sitting there like horrified, because my brain just can't wrap around what the hell my eyes are seeing and what my ears are hearing, right? This guy was nuts. But at one point, the crazy thing is, sometimes, like, you say these people are nuts, but they're freaking smart. They're very smart, which throws you off even more. Like, you think of some crazy person looking crazy, but half the time they don't look crazy. They don't. But there's a point in this interview where the psychiatrist asked Richard a question, and it went from this happy, jovial guy to seeing his face just twist. Like, it just went from like happy, easygoing, laid back demeanor to just like, I thought this guy was gonna get murdered. Like, his face, it was just a split second. It just changed. The look in his eye changed. His face just kind of twisted. It was the wildest, gnarliest thing I've ever seen. They have to be smart to not get caught, yes. They tend to get caught once they've gone long enough and they start getting cocky and they start making mistakes and they start slipping up. But yes, absolutely. They're usually not very dumb. Yeah, it was too much. Crazy part is how deceiving they are. 100%. So yeah, I mean, that's something that's always been an interest of mine. I used to read about it a lot. And this actually was a funny story I thought of a little bit ago while we were talking. BTK was the same way. Yes, Scott. Not only that, think about Ted Bundy. Even after he's arrested, he had a whole like fan club of ladies that wanted to marry him and have his baby. They did not believe that he had murdered a bunch of women, but he did. And it's just fascinating because you look at the guy, and he was studying to be a lawyer. He worked as a 911 dispatcher, I believe, or a suicide hotline. Excuse me, it was a suicide hotline. He was in what looked like a healthy relationship with a woman who had a child. And he's just going on these murder sprees. But then you look at him, if you don't know them, I honestly didn't find him to be that attractive, but apparently he was at the time. And he was not a dumb man. Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also terrifying that the crimes can come out and people will throw themselves at these people I don't know. It's very, very odd to me. I don't get it. The funny story I was going to tell you guys is there was this book that I had. It's a really, really good book. If I still have it, I might. And the author went into serial killers and broke them down into categories. So there was two main categories, and it was organized and disorganized. Somebody who just haphazardly kills, and somebody else who's very structured about it, and they have a pattern, and they hunt, and that sort of thing. And then beyond that, they break it down into more categories, like what motivates them to kill. Is it sexual? Is it a control thing? And they go through all the different subcategories. And I found that really interesting. And then they went into case studies of the different serial killers, and they'd have you try to figure out which category they fit into, disorganized or organized, and then the subcategories. So anyways, I would be reading these books while I was on the road with GH all the freaking time. I'd be on trains reading them, planes reading them, car reading them. That was me. The good thing about this, just a reminder to everyone, please click that like button. Thank you for that, Evening Crickets. Thank you. Yes, likes help my channel. I really appreciate it if you like and share, and it's not something that takes more than a second of your time. So for those of you who have done it, thank you, thank you, thank you. But the funny thing about this is every time I would be reading these books on the road, it was great because most people will look at what I'm reading. People always do this. You're reading a book and you always can see them kind of side-eyeing it to see what you're reading. And I noticed for the most part when I was reading a book that was like crime bosses, crime murders, serial killers, all that sort of stuff, nobody would bother me. And I kind of liked it. I didn't have to have my earbuds on and pretend I couldn't hear anybody. They just look at my book and be like, she's a psychopath, so we're going to leave her alone. It was a total win because I'd read what I wanted to read and I'd be left alone. But there was this one time I was heading to New York City for GH for something. I don't remember what the hell it was. And I was alone and I was reading this book, and this man sits next to me and goes, "So, you like serial killers too, huh?" And I'm sitting there like, oh my god, did I just run into my first one? Because he was so creepy, and he was so excited about it, and it was just so weird. I tried to keep the conversation very short, showed him my book, did the polite, yeah, no, and then he went away. But it freaked me the hell out. Yeah. Yes, he did. Kris, have you ever investigated the smiley face killers of the national park disappearances? I've heard of the smiley face killers, 100% heard of them, but I'm having a hard time remembering how that one all played out. Bundy I studied for quite a while because he was born in my home state of New Hampshire. Or no, I'm sorry, he was in Vermont, so it was close to my home state. And his targets, I mean, I could have fit into his little target. The girls he would go after, they were, especially when I was reading about him. I was in my early 20s, long dark hair, I kind of fit his victim type. And he scared the shit out of me because here's a man studying to be a lawyer. He's working at a suicide hotline. He's got what looks like a healthy relationship with a woman who has a young child. And he's just insane, completely and utterly insane, smart and insane, which is just baffling to me. So yeah, I'm not remembering off the top of my head on the smiley face killers exactly how that played out, but I have heard of them for sure. Do you own the playing cards that depict serial killers? No, I've never even heard of them. They determine, oh, you're the perfect serial killer. What? What? They did the same thing for the book of the Amityville Horror, and the story was different from the facts. Yes, that's a perfect example, actually. And that's what drives me nuts, is because sometimes a real story is so much more interesting without the embellishments and without the extra nonsense. So, new name for Wickedly Williams. Yes, yes, I know. I'm into weird shit. I always have been. But I don't know. And the other part is I can't imagine the people finding, like the people making the discoveries. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. All right, Dylan Fell. I'm not going to ignore your question. His question is, what is your take on the Cody and Satori situation? Here's my take on Cody and Satori. First of all, I've never been around. I don't know that I've ever worked with them personally on an investigation. I don't think I have. I'm trying to remember if I've even been on a case that they've been to at the same time. Ugh. Maybe on a live show or something. I honestly can't remember. So if you guys remember one, you're like, hey, I honestly don't. I'm just not remembering it off the top of my head. Cody, I swear I've never worked with Cody that I can think of. Cody came in long after I became, like, he came in long after I left, and I think him and Satori really, I don't know if they started right around the time that I came in. I don't know. I can't remember. I have not witnessed what they do personally. And when I cannot witness what somebody's doing personally, I don't like to comment on it because I haven't had a chance to try to look into things and pull things apart and kind of debunk and question and investigate it, right? I don't think that would be fair to me, for me to really comment on them in that way if I haven't been around to witness it myself. That being said, I know people that have been there with them for investigations who I trust wholeheartedly, and they say that their experiences with them were pretty wild, because it's not like the sounds are coming from them. It's like sounds are coming from the ceiling above them. Sounds are like footsteps coming down the hall towards them. And from what they've said to me, there's no way they can explain it. But if you're just watching this from your house or from your computer screen, you know, a lot of people are going to think the Fox sisters, if you know paranormal history at all. And I can understand that too. On the other hand, I know Jason pretty well. And I think that if Satori and Cody were doing anything shady, Jay would be fixing that shit quick. Like, I just don't see him tolerating it. So I honestly can't comment on it anything beyond that, because I've never worked with them personally. I've never been able to see how it all works, and I haven't had the chance to try to debunk it, try to question it, try to pull it apart. I can't. So for that reason, I'm just right now, I'm just like, I don't know. I've heard what I heard from people I trust. I know Satori, obviously. I met her when she was a little tiny thing bouncing around as like, I think she was like 4 when I met her. I can't say that I'm super close with Satori. I know her through her dad. I haven't been there. I don't know, but I would like to think that they wouldn't be doing anything stupid. So that's my take on it, guys. I really can't give you anything more than that because I haven't been there for it. But you've seen the videos though, right? No, I haven't. I really don't watch anything. I think I saw one. I haven't seen the videos online. I saw one on Ghost Hunters where they found that pen in the wall. And I remember watching it like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like if it's playing out the way they're showing it. And I've worked on the show long enough to know that they've never manipulated anything I've done. And I've never seen anything manipulated myself. So I'd like to think it played exactly how it played. And again, there's people that I trust wholeheartedly that are swearing by it and saying that if they hadn't witnessed it themselves, they probably wouldn't believe it. But having witnessed it themselves, they do believe it. So again, I'm just going to have to leave that one open because I haven't investigated with them yet. I haven't experienced what they do firsthand. So I'm just going to leave it at that. The funny thing I find about this, though, is that people are going at them so freaking hard. That I have seen. Yet these same people will believe that there's demons everywhere. Like, that I don't understand. like, what the hell? They will argue that demons are in every house, in every corner, on every street, in every town. But then they're going after Satori and Cody. So I'm just like, that part doesn't really match up either. Paranormal is in a really weird place right now. Very, very weird place. So I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't witnessed it, and I'm going to have to kind of stick to that until I do. I don't know. Because it's a spectacular claim, but so is demons. Demons are a spectacular claim. They're actually a ridiculous claim because demonic activity is not common. Like, it's not common at all. So to have as many people running around screaming about demons as there are, to get some clicks and some likes on the internet, it's silly that people will believe that, but they question Corey and Satori and Cody, which I'm glad people are questioning, but I just don't understand why they're not questioning the demon stuff too. That's where I'm confused. I just don't get it. I don't get it. The paranormal is so insane right now because when I first came in, it was skepticism, it was questioning, it was debunking, it was looking into history. It wasn't going in there and trying to prove that there was a ghost, and it wasn't about us trying to prove to you that ghosts are real. And now it's just like, well, duh, ghosts are real, absolutely 100%. There's no debating it anymore, and they're everywhere. And not only are they everywhere, you know, demons are everywhere. And it just makes me absolutely freaking bonkers because that is such a load of BS. Such a load of BS. Yeah. That's why I had gotten out of it for 2 weeks shy of 10 years. Because I saw where it was going. I had front row seats when I was on GHI, and I did not like it. And I jumped out. There was a few reasons why I came back. I missed everybody a lot. I was in a marriage in Australia that was extremely broken and very abusive in many ways. So when I came home, I was very broken as a person and talked to Jay for the first time in a long time and did an event for the first time in a long time and got to see everybody. And I felt a little spark in me that I hadn't felt in a long time. And that's when Jay asked me if I wanted to come out on a case again. And I figured it might be good. Might be good too. Even though the paranormal is weird and the paranormal is crazy and it's gotten to this weird freaking place, I also learned it's something that I can't escape. Not that I wanted to escape it, but it's just like, TV is a weird thing, right? There's so many different angles to me. You know, you guys are finding out today that I'm big into the serial killers and that sort of thing. I've always been big into Halloween. I've always been a huge art person. I've been into genealogy forever. There are all these different sides to me. But when you work in television and people know you for the show, that's what they know you for. Obviously, that makes sense. But when you're the person living the life and you feel like the only thing about you that's worth a damn is that one thing, you start feeling kind of hollow and you start getting frustrated and you start kind of acting out. And that's one aspect of where I was when I left. The other piece was that I didn't like the direction the paranormal was going. There was a bloodletting stunt on GHI that I did not care for, and I was very vocal about it. And then I was just like, I didn't sign up for this shit. So I got out. I also hit 30, and typical 30-year-old wants to settle down and have kids. So, you know, at that point, we were on the road for like 300 days a year. When I left GH, when I went to GHI, we were on the road less, but the travel was a lot more intense going overseas. Meeting people was impossible. Having relationships was impossible. And I just finally got to the point where I was just tired. I was tired. I had enough. I was missing everything at home. Holidays, you name it. My friends are getting married. They're buying houses. They're having babies. And there's me, who was not doing any of that. Then I didn't like where the paranormal was going. And it was just making me sick, to be honest, after the thing on GHI happened. And I was tired. I was really tired. And I just had enough. And I tapped out. So I don't know what to tell you. It just was what it was. Alcoholics and paranormal investigators love the spirits. Damn straight. Kris, would you ever work with an adventure show with Josh Gates? I've worked with Josh before. No, I don't think so. I mean, I did the Jersey Devil with them. It was a little much. It was a little much. You know, it was fun, but it was just like, you guys are crazy running around in the woods like your ass could get bit by something. Like, the worst I gotta worry about is falling through a floor or having a roof cave in or getting bitten by a rabid raccoon that got into the building somehow, which that sounds scary too, I guess. But I don't know, the idea of being inside somewhere it just appealed to me. Josh is too political. I'm actually very political as well. I've calmed down over the years. I haven't calmed down on my opinions. I've just calmed down on broadcasting them so much because we're kind of in this weird space where everybody just immediately hates each other if you don't agree with them. Or you're saying something that they don't agree with, which kind of sucks. I tend to be more political on Twitter. I've always been kind of political on there, but Facebook, I'm not at all. Facebook, I post a bunch of crazy memes. I just post things that make me laugh. And that started when I was living in Australia in that very, very, very unhealthy relationship. And I completely and utterly lost myself. So I didn't know what to post anymore. Like, I couldn't pretend that I was happy. It was one of those deals. So I started just post things that I thought were funny. And now you guys are just used to memes there, so I don't know what else to do but post memes. I think that if I stopped completely, everybody would be like, what the hell? Like, she's leaving us hanging. But yeah. Burnout. Absolutely. Absolutely burnt out. I was creeped out by the bloodletting episode. Me too. I was rip shit, but they didn't show how rip shit I was. I was over the top mad, and I had no control over anything, even though I was down as a team lead. That show was more show than team. So it was more producer-led than it was team-led, where Ghost Hunters was team-led. Like, we ran it. You know, Jay and Grant were at the head. They called the shots. Steve was like the go-to manager of sorts for the rest of us, and there was a hierarchy, there was like a pyramid there's structure, you know, and we all felt the same way about things, about being hard on things, and we'd stand together as a group if we knew things were wrong or like we didn't want to do things a certain way. On GHI, it was all very like, no one kind of stood together. It was weird. I enjoyed the travel a lot. There's people on there that I still consider friends. There's others that I just have no desire to talk to anymore, and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it is what it is, right? Seeing you now from your time in Australia and in an awful marriage, then I'm so proud of you and your amazing recovery. I have been following your career for a long time now, and I'm happy with you where you are. Thank you, Mike. I'll be honest, it's funny, I was thinking about the other day, it's this September will be 5 years since I left, and I'm still not 100%. I'm still quite a bit lost. But I am in a healthy relationship, probably for the first time since I was in my early 20s. Was clearly stuck in a pattern of abusive people. It's weird how you don't notice it when you're in it. But yeah. I'm very much a creative person, and I very much want to do something with that on here. But I also have a love of history. I have a lot, like, love of weird shit, like, not love, but a curiosity for the crime stuff. So I'm trying to find a place on here. I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah. Kris, why aren't you writing a book about your life? I think that would be a perfect twist from the other people that have written books about it. I don't know that I have the attention span for a book. But I'm also the type of person who is very imposter syndrome. Like, I'm like, why would anybody want to listen to me and my story and what I think about things? Which is why I also struggle on here to pick a direction, because I'm just kind of like, well, I don't know. Like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing something else? That's where I say I'm still struggling a bit, because back when, sorry, I was just reading a comment, and I just lost my train of thought. What the hell was I saying? Oh, back before I met my ex-husband, I had a good idea of who I was, and I a good sense of self, right? I like to describe it to people as, like, think about an Etch-a-Sketch. I'm so showing my age right now, but let's say you sit down with an Etch-a-Sketch and you draw something on it, and it's far from perfect, but you're happy with where it's at. And then this random ass person walks by, pick it up, they shake the shit out of it, they put it down and walk off. That's how I describe what I went through felt like. I felt like somebody came along, picked me up, shook the shit out of me, put me back down, and off they went. You know, they were unaffected, they weren't destroyed by it, and then I was just ground zero. It's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. So yes, now, even though there are things that before would, like, it was like a fire inside of me, stuff that I really enjoyed doing, now it's stuff that I know that I like doing, but I'm kind of numb. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, there's few things that really excite me. So I've been trying hard to return to the things that used to really excite me, hoping that will kind of wake me up. And it's amazing that it's almost 5 years out, you know, and I'm still feeling the effects of it. It's just like, what the hell? I don't know, but I'm trying. I am trying, and I'd really like to find a place here on YouTube. Like I said, I've always been a very creative person, and I don't know, I feel like even though I struggle with imposter bullshit, you know, I know there's things that I'm good at, and I know there's things that I know inside and out, like genealogy, and I enjoy history quite a bit. But I feel like I know I do have things to share with you guys. I just need to kind of get over my own mental hang-ups with it. I don't think I could put it any other way. Been there too. Yeah, it's not fun, Pam. And you made another comment that I caught. It's so true. So true. You said serial killers and abusers know their targets very well. And you are right. You are right. One thing I learned about myself is that there were people in my life when I was younger who were very abusive towards me. These weren't my parents. My parents were amazing. They're kind of like extended family types, and they were abusive to all of us, but we all kind of took it. And not only did we have to take it, we're all kind of taught that your family's your family and you have to back your family no matter what, right? Well, that carried on into my relationships. If somebody treated me like shit, I was still in my head like, oh, well, that's just part of how relationships work, right? You just gotta love them anyways, and things will come together. The unfortunate part is when you meet abusive types, they will pick out very quickly that you are like that, and they will exploit it. And if you're not aware of what you're doing, which I was not for a long time, they will take you on one hell of a ride. So yes, cheers to figuring my shit out on that end. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. I was stuck in quite a pattern. Like, my ex-husband wasn't the only one. I started dating somebody directly after him that was a lot like him. Not as bad, but same personality type. And I remember being 2.5 years in with him, and my eyes just like opened. I'm like, holy shit. It was like, I did it again. How did I do this again? And this is what bothers me too, as somebody who was like so hardcore into researching about serial killers and manipulative personality types. And it completely went right by me when I met people in my own life that weren't serial killers. But they were still very narcissistic, they were very abusive, they were very manipulative, and it just like, right over my head. These people are tricky, and when you let them in, it is disastrous, more so for you than them. So, but yeah, the guy that I'm with now, he's kind of like me. Quite frankly, he's found himself in similar spots. So we are very similar in temperament, we're very similar in personality and sarcasm and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it's been nice. It's been a nice change. Not that I'm glad that he's gone through similar shit, but it's nice to not have to have my guard up all the time with somebody. Very different. I don't know. You have a great range of interests, and I like your style of storytelling. Thank you. Well, hopefully my storytelling will get a little better after I stop getting so nervous with this sort of stuff. So what I really want to do, guys, is have like one video a week go up, and then do a weekly live stream. I like doing live streams. I like being able to interact with you guys, but I also like feel that it'll help me feel more natural even when I'm filming. And I would like to have more live streams where I am doing the storytelling like today, but hopefully by then, like I said, my nerves won't be like crazy. So as you can tell, you won't be able to tell that I'm nervous if I'm nervous. I thought I saw a spider. Talk about nervous. Freaking hate those things. And by the way, random note, I vote for more live streams. Get better with your face. Get better when you face your fears. I thought you said get better with your face. I'm like, what's wrong with my face? I guess that's a story for a lot of people. Marriage counselors have bad divorces too. People are just weird. Yeah, 100%. I'll be at the beach when you are at Penhurst. Oh, you sucker. Well, I don't want to say I'd rather be at the beach because Penhurst was fun last year, but I miss the beach. This New England girl is landlocked in Arizona, and I'm telling you, it is horseshit. I miss the beach. So crazy. You are a great host. Thank you so much. I know I'm nervous though. I get like jittery and I rush through things. I think what was hard today is there were so many weird little pieces that I had to try to tie together for you guys so that it made sense. I was afraid of bouncing between storytelling and trying to answer questions, and I knew I was just gonna go off the rails really quick. Because there's a lot going on and trying to make sense of. But because of that, since it's the first time I've done a live stream where I'm actually trying to tell you guys a story, I think I was moving through it a little too fast. That's okay. We're learning. The start didn't help. Oh my god, the start was so annoying. It was so annoying. I had it all set up. Do you know what it was? I finally figured out what I did. So on my phone, I went into YouTube to copy the link to get to the video. So I clicked on the link to get to where the live stream would be, right? Then I backed out and I put the links on Facebook and everywhere else. Then I went back into the YouTube app and it had the video at the bottom, but I pressed to go to live stream for the create button. So it left that video kind of on hold. And then I started the live stream, which then started the video playing over the live stream. That is what happened. So, next time, I will know better. It is such a pain in my ass. And it's funny too, because every time Dustin and I have gone live, we've had problems too. It's such a pain in the butt. That's okay though. We'll figure it out. And I swear it's not an old age thing. It's this technology is a pain in my ass thing. What the hell? I know, I agree. It's horseshit. You're doing just fine, Kris. If you get nervous, just picture your camera in its underwear. It's true. Public speaking is rough. It is. I got a C+ in public speaking in college. I wasn't good at it. I'm actually a fairly shy person. I am. And it's funny because my family has said to me, they're like, I don't know how you do these events and do the Q&As and stuff because it's a lot of people to be standing in front of and answering questions. There's a reason why I haven't done lectures. I did do one a long time ago, but I get really nervous and my hands shake and my voice gets kind of like shaky. And I sweat. It's awful. But when I do Q&As, I don't mind it because it's like a panel of us. So I'm up there usually with the team and it's like I'm one of 6. And then it's like, well, not all eyeballs are on me. And there's certain people on the team that like to talk. So I'm just like, let them talk. And I'll just sit here until somebody asks me a question and I'll worry about that question when I get that question. But never let them see you sweat. I know. It's hard to do that when you're on the spot. It probably caused a disturbance in this space-time continuum. That's very possible. That is possible. I'm late to the party, but I'll go back and watch the whole video. Learn more on here than our off-the-rail chats on Instagram. Oh yeah, the Instagram chats are... So, for those of you guys who don't know, I'm on Patreon, and we have an open chat there that's open all the time for the base level. So, it's like $5 level. But it's funny because on there, people aren't very chatty. Like, we'll message each other here and there, and then it'll just be like dead silence for days or weeks. But then I have Instagram, and my subscribers there, I can open up chats, and I usually only do them for 24 hours at a time because those ones are so chaotic in the best way. But everybody is so chatty. I'm just like, Jesus, if this was open all the time, I don't know if I get anything done. But I have been wanting to experiment and open that one up for a week and just see how it goes. It's funny because I'm wondering if there isn't a 24-hour window, people won't be so chatty because they're like, oh, I could get into it at any time like the other one. I don't know. I might have to try that. So, for those of you who are with me on Instagram, which I've seen a few of you are in here, Mark, you are one, maybe I'll try that. I'll do it for like a week and see how everybody goes. Because Instagram is free. Actually, with Instagram, you can do a membership there too. So, it's a one-level thing, and people can pay to subscribe to you for extra content. And one of the things that I do is the chats. That's the main thing that I do. I'll share some like behind the scenes stuff at paranormal events and other little things. I try to share there what I share on Patreon at that same membership level, but I haven't shared the prompts there. But that chat, the subscriber chat, is usually pretty chaotic in a fun way. We're all sending each other crazy memes. The jokes are just... I mean, if you're a super PC person, the chat's probably not for you. Because it's respectful, but it's like all over the place. You have to have a sense of humor or else you would not like it. I would chat with you, but I don't want to bug you because I know you're busy. Well, that's the thing, Mark. We always have a good time. That is the thing with the subscriber stuff, is like, especially with the subscriber chats on Instagram, I open them. So I can open them for 24 hours. I could open them for a week. I could open them for a month. I've stuck with 24 hours because I figure, okay, I know the next 24 hours isn't too crazy and too over the top and too busy. I can do this. So I'll open it up and we'll all kind of go bonkers for 24 hours. But I don't know how I go with a week. I think that if I open it up for a week, I just have to let everybody know, like, I will chat as much as I humanly can. But there might be a lot of chatting amongst yourselves when I can't do it. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll try that out. What do you think, Mark? You think our group can handle a week? Like I said, I have it open all the time on Patreon. That's like part of the base level tier, is we have an open chat all the time. But it's not used nearly as much as the Instagram one. And I think because there's just the 24-hour window, people are like, ooh, I need to jump in. But I don't know. All right, guys, it has been going to expand Wickedly Williams. In the works with you and Brett. So, Mark, honestly, I like 24 hours. Yeah. And that's the thing, too. I think if everybody's phones were pinging all day long, I don't know that they're going to like it. Scott asked if I'm going to expand on Wickedly Williams. I don't know what I'm going to do with Wickedly Williams. I'll be honest. It has been struggling lately. Making sales right now has been like pulling teeth. It's actually worried me quite a bit because the store was doing really well until about October of last year. And of all times to struggle, a Halloween shop shouldn't be struggling in October. I had some really good years, but I think the economy is just such shit right now. Like, I can't even be mad. But, and it sucks because I keep putting ads out for different things that I've got, and I'm in a position where I don't really want to buy too much new stuff because things that I have right now aren't really moving. Exactly, Scott said everyone's broke. Everyone is broke, you know, and it's like I can't be mad, I can't be upset, I can't feel like I failed because I know that's not it. My shop was actually doing really well. But it sucked because that was my main source of income to allow me to be doing this sort of stuff, and now it's kind of doing a little bit of a dive. So now I'm trying to like scramble to figure out what I'm going to do in order to be able to keep this going, because I'd really like to do this. I'd like to do more creative things on here. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to completely close it out, but I also need to figure out how to move some stuff and maybe downsize it. Because right now I have all of my stuff in a storage unit, and it's just like they just keep upping the rent every 6 months, which is ridiculous. So I've been debating of pulling my stuff all out of there, doing a massive sale on the bigger things that I have, trying to get rid of it so I can just downsize everything while things are kind of crazy, because I don't know what to do. I'll be honest, I don't know what to do with it. I'd rather not close it. I think that it could play well with everything else that I'm trying to create here. So I think closing it would be silly, and I like having the stuff to bring to events, but I don't know. Black Hat Team said, work on monetization for YouTube. You'll be able to turn on donations. Yes, I am working towards that. The watch hours, oh my gosh, man. I don't know how people do it when they're starting from scratch. You know what I mean? I've been very fortunate, and then I've had the show, and you guys know me from that, and I've been lucky to have people come over here. Wait, racing pigeons on Instagram. Yeah, I'll have to get into that in another night. Yes, we've been racing pigeons. But I don't know how people do it. Like, trying to build watch hours. 4,000 watch hours for ad monetization is a lot. And unless people are binging videos on YouTube like I do with certain creators that I like it is slow moving. Right now, where am I at? I'm not far from hitting the 3,000 mark to start getting the supers and the membership stuff. I just don't know how much I want to do the membership stuff when I've already got Patreon going. That's the hard part too. It seems like every platform has their subscription stuff. So I've got subscribers over on Instagram. I've got like 2 on Facebook. Patreon I've got going, and the idea of memberships here is just like, oh my god. You know, and I could work it out so everybody on all the different membership things get the same thing across the board, but it's still a million different platforms I have to post to. So it's just, oh my goodness. Racing pigeons, I'm intrigued. Tell you what, so the race that I was supposed to help my boyfriend drop all the pigeons off to this weekend got canceled because the weather is really, really bad. So the next weekend, I'll be going with him again and doing the pigeons. I'm trying to think, I did do video from the last one, but I didn't film a lot. I filmed us releasing them, but I don't know. I'll share something soon about them, though. I promise, because I've had a lot of people question me on that one. That said, though, I'm going to jump off here because it is nearly 7 o'clock. I have not had dinner. I am freaking hungry after talking death and killers and dismemberment and all that weird shit tonight. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I really, really do appreciate it. I really am trying to get something rolling here. Just hang tight until I figure out what the hell we're doing. But next week I plan to have a video out where I did an art project and I mixed spooky with spring, and I'm really excited about that one because it's been taking me forever. It should have been out last Friday. It should have been out this Friday. It was more than I anticipated. It should be out next Friday. So with that said, thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. And we will be doing a weekly live as soon as I figure out which night it's going to be. But until then, night. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And happy Easter for those of us that celebrate. For those of you who don't, have a great weekend anyway. And thank you guys again so much. Night.